over 200 fully armed men of Macedon, marching in formation with those long pikes aloft, the mighty Sarissa.
Good evening. Due to relentless raids from all sides, King Philip of Macedon enacted revolutionary military reforms that sparked an unprecedented rise in Macedon's power, both in the region and in the wider world. Here to discuss this is Kallikrates, a soldier in the famed, some might say infamous, Macedonian Phalanx. Kallikrates, welcome. Let's start with the long pikes, the legendary Sarissa.
Sarissas? Yes. Long pikes. The longest, sir. 15 cubits. Some break apart for transport. It has an iron spearhead and a spike at the back, which provides stability, balance, and you're able to anchor it into the ground. Some of the lads call them war whiskers, but the enemy call them, oh my gods, we're going to die.
King Philip's formation and strategic use of this new model Macedonian phalanx, with its long sarissa, thrust warfare into a new era. The cavalry also played a major role in this success, but it's fair to say that the phalanx, with its disciplined soldiers and innovative tactics, is the cornerstone of the Macedonians' military success.
I, of course, would agree. We march ever forward to secure the lands of Macedon, to bring stability and prosperity to our people. Our homeland has been plagued so long by raids from the Phoenicians to the north, Illyrians from the northwest, and Thracians to the northeast. The Greeks, with their insatiable thirst for trade, have not hesitated in engaging with these tribes and trading with them. It is likely that their commerce has emboldened them, maybe supplying and funding them. I wouldn't put it past the Greeks.
Apart from direct military threats, the generation preceding King Philip saw much turmoil, politically, economically, and dynastically. What can you tell us of Philip's father's and mother's time, King Amantus and Queen Eurydice?
Oh, such stories floated back our way. Fair Queen Eurydice, daughter of an Illyrian chieftain, you know. Stern and wild, she didn't keep quiet at court. She secured Macedon's independence through her marriage to King Amantus. Alliances were carefully maintained through dangerous times of war. She personally appealed to the Athenian mercenary general Epicrates to save the throne for her sons. What favors and bribes did that take? The very future hinged on such subtle diplomacy. Where blades fail, words and deeds, and the favor of a beautiful woman. Yes, she loved our lands, founded schools of higher learning too. I was more interested in the war stories, blades and glory, and a long march to a strange land. All I ever dreamed of, sir, all I ever dreamed of.
Can you expand on these times and their effect on your upbringing? Were these issues relevant and discussed amongst your people and your family?
Oh, we talked of nothing else, sir. If your country is always on the back foot, if you've never been relaxed for more than a month in summer, you turn your worry into action, sir, so your sons may one day see some kind of peace and stability. The Spartans, it said, helped King Amantus maintain the throne. My father told me chilling stories of the Spartans as a child, admired and feared them. The real fear was the Spartans looking too closely this way. Distance was our ally there, and they had Athens to spar with. A habit of hatred like fire even the gods couldn't douse.
Now to young Philip and his two brothers. Before becoming the renowned king, Philip experienced a significant period of his youth as a hostage in Thebes following the assassination of his brother, the young King Alexander II, who was then succeeded by Perdiccas. The Theban general Pelopidas, a dominant military figure in Greece at the time, played a crucial role in this event. Pelopidas intervened in Macedonian affairs to stabilize the region and support the ambitions of Ptolemy of Elaros, who had assassinated Alexander and sought to control the throne. As part of the peace settlement and to ensure Macedonian compliance, Philip, along with other hostages, were taken to Thebes. During his time in Thebes, Philip was exposed to the military and political strategies of the Thebans, then at the height of its power. He lived in the house of Pamines, a predominant Theban general, and had the opportunity to observe the Theban military system, particularly the tactics of the Sacred Band, a legendary elite military unit.
Am I to attribute Macedonian innovation to Theban ingenuity? I take exception, sir, as I would take your head.
Not at all, Kallikrates. The cunning of your king in observing the strategies and tactics of such an undefeated regional power was an opportunity not to be missed. Later, he adapted strategies and tactics he observed to suit Macedonian needs. The Sarissa was indeed a Macedonian innovation. The specific development and use of the Sarissa were unique to Macedon. The king's innovation lay not only in the length of the Sarissa, but in the training and discipline to use such an unwieldy weapon. What were your early impressions of the king? The politics? Your family's part in it all?
We didn't know all the goings-on in the capital. Politics and time have muddled my mind like Farsi and wine. As a lad, I heard King Philip saved us from the Illyrian pretenders living in luxury off our backs in the old capital at Aigai. But Philip had Illyrian blood in him, from his mother, Queen Eurydice, granddaughter of a Lancastrian king. Political marriages, well, they keep Macedon independent. Allegiance is made through blood. The king is making as much conquest through marriage as war. Up to 6 wives now, I think. I still dislike Illyrians, Thracians, Phoenicians, Paeonians, especially Athenians, but we have people from all those lands serving in our army now, comrades against a greater enemy. I come from farming family, generations living near the Strymon River. Swift-flowing Strymon ran all the way down to lovely Amphipolis. Our grain sold very well there, but I knew the squeeze of taxation early in life, seeing the joy fade from my father's face over the years. Our yields grew fatter, but our cut thinner. Before Philip's reign, the mountains held the Thracians back for a time. Good soil and fertile land, burden in such times coveted by the Thracians, high up in the mountains, kept an eye on us, waiting for their moment. We glanced up and fair a few times a day, even though we had permanent lookouts. They came, and we went. Moved further inland, like the rest, squeezed. We were prepared to run, kept our carts yoked. We saw what happened when they caught up with you. Bloody work, sir. Wonder why not a Macedonian farmer fights so fiercely. We resettled as best we could, safe for a few years, but they came further inland one day, fast. We would have been overrun had the cavalry from the capital not started to secure the borders. Military reforms had begun by then. Standardization of weapons, a real paid soldiery. Paid! You can imagine what I wanted to be when I grew up. My father insisted we go back to our original family land. Rich, dark soil was all he knew, but there was a weak, easily bribed garrison. The Thracians came again. I hid as they did their ghastly work, sir. Buried my father, my mother, and now stuck. Left that place, went to a small plot near Philippi. Well garrisoned, safe. King's gold mines were now there. Starting to be built anyway. Terrible farming country. I wasn't experienced in financial sides of things. Farming. Too young. Spent too much time annoying the garrison guards, dreaming of far-off lands and bloody revenge. And women. In equal measure.
King Philip is described as relocating people in towns according to his strategic needs, similar to how shepherds move their flocks, populating and depopulating areas based on their strategic importance. He settled some places on the kingdom's frontiers to defend against enemies, while others were placed at the kingdom's extremities. War captives were distributed amongst the cities to bolster their populations. What are your thoughts on such extreme redistributions of so many people?
Caused a lot of resentment, but for me it was a boon. The army supplied some materials, but one had to be of a higher class than I for the privilege of training for the Phalanx. Thanks to the king's reforms, my father's land was divided and resettled. Compensating those displaced by raids was unheard of before King Philip. Words cannot describe my gratitude. My smile returned after a long absence. It wasn't dangerous to live there anymore, you see, and he had many people to resettle, whether they liked it or not. I received more funds than I had ever had, along with advisors to help me manage them. I poured libations on the land and threw a festival. Had 2 shrines built. I could participate in assemblies, and my opinion mattered. My little farm grew. Now I was of the hoplite class. Weapons and supplies were provided by the king. Oh, I knew the bargain and no arm twisting needed, but I didn't tell them that. I finally got through the garrison gate. You should have seen the guards' faces. I rubbed their noses in it, sir.
The Macedonian hoplite class, with standardized and advanced weaponry, a greater emphasis on military structure, discipline, and longer service, differed somewhat from the Greek hoplites, whose landed middle class provided their own weapons, often family heirlooms. Although experienced in warfare, they saw it as a shorter, seasonal activity, rather than a vocation. Share your first experiences with the foremost of this advanced, standardized Macedonian weapon, the one you're familiar with personally, the mighty Sarissa.
Well, I was finally inside the barracks gates. My farm was running nicely thanks to the workers and advisors. I was a bit arrogant with my recent fortune, but I was soon humbled, sir, and then some. I was used to heavy lifting, but I gasped too when they brought out those long poles for us. Pikes? Surely not. Some laughed, thinking they were going to build something with them. No one had seen or used such long pikes. How was it possible? I said it wasn't. How could you move them? I said we couldn't. The Lokagos, drill sergeant Kletos, had me hold one for an hour for my insolence and doubt. But I held it, and he was impressed, though it nearly killed me. My arms burned, but I never gave him the pleasure of showing it. He would find more cunning punishments for me in the coming months.
Macedon was a primary exporter of timber used in shipbuilding and construction by the Greek city-states and beyond. This important economic resource would provide King Philip with the means to produce vast quantities of the long Sarissa pikes from ash and or cornel wood, whose properties were ideal for the weapon. Rich in iron ore deposits, Macedon could also produce strong tools, weapons, and armor. Grave goods uncovered from Macedon's Bronze Age shows a history of intricate crafting skills. These resources were a reason Macedon was pressed so consistently from all sides, forcing her to evolve into a stronger, more militaristic state, or risk being carved up by her neighbours. It took the political manoeuvring of King Amantis, Queen Eurydice and her sons, especially the knowledge Philip gained as a hostage in Thebes, to set the conditions for the rapid rise of Macedon's military strength. Kallikrates, when were you first aware of King Philip's deadly new version of the Phalanx?
Our strategos, General Nikitas, had a lesson in store for us doubters. Brought out a trained Phalanx unit from a rival town to school us and put us to shame. A surprise we would never forget. That mighty sound approaching filled us with fear and excitement. As it rounded the barracks entrance and marched upon us, some broken ransom, so fearsome was the sight. Over 200 fully armed men of Macedon marching in formation with those long pikes aloft, the mighty Sarissa. A deafening clamor of rattling pikes rising. A trumpet pealed above it all, sounding the halt. Silence still. Such discipline. A signal from somewhere, and those dreadful teeth started down, lowering, down, one after another deploying, sir, a fearsome formation. The first 5 ranks presented pikes straight out in front. Now the mighty length showed its tactic plain.
King Philip's first use of the Sarissa armed phalanx was thought to be at the historically pivotal Battle of Chaeronea against Athens and mighty Thebes. Prince Alexander led a decisive charge on the left flank, with the phalanx at the center and King Philip on the right. The terrain and tactics employed in this battle, however, do not necessarily point to the extensive use of large Sarissa armed units, as the feigned retreat to lure the Athenians in involved reversing uphill over uneven terrain, not what a Sarissa armed phalanx was designed for or could easily achieve, especially while fighting off a rapidly advancing enemy. Perhaps serving as a testing ground and psychological impact, this roughly 30,000 strong Macedonian army employed various units and tactics throughout the battle's duration. The Sarissa armed phalanx might have been used differently here and in later battles, where flatter terrain and larger enemy numbers showcased its unique capabilities. Kallikrates, continue describing your first experience encountering this new Sarissa armed phalanx.
You could be the fiercest man alive, but getting to the fight was impossible. If you passed through the first row of sharp spears alive, 4 more await you before you even get to the front ranks of men, all shielded too, and slashing blades. If the phalanx marched forward, thrusting, well, forget it. Make your peace. Fair turn to joy, sir, tears from us and those following this fearsome creature's march. Cheering, manic, dancing. The phalanx was like the mouth of a giant titan approaching. Unstoppable, sir, the very mouth of Hades. You'd almost feel sorry for the enemy, emboldened no more. When this new Macedonian phalanx arrived, oh, a reckoning was coming, sir, a reckoning. Then and then, out of the thick dust a swirling, a rider riding hard, circling, whirling around us, a masterful horseman. He draws up. Well, the man aloft was Parmenion himself, Strategos Parmenion. What an honor! To be in the presence of one of King Philip's best generals. What a day!
The renowned General Parmenion served 3 generations of Macedonian kings, serving under King Amantus before Philip, involved in diplomatic missions to Athens, the strategically important island of Euboea, and to Asia Minor with an army of 10,000 to liberate Greeks under the Persian rule. Parmenion helped Philip unite the Greek city-states to establish the League of Corinth. King Philip trusted him to command his army in his absence. The Macedonian nobility class started training on horse at a very young age. Parmenion's son, Philotas, would later command the elite group of king's horsemen, the Mighty Companions, regarded as the first shock cavalry in Europe.
That well-schooled phalanx enjoyed their effect, sir, their example. But not harsh on us, not then. A celebration. Drinking, wrestling, feats of strength, all in good nature. We felt so alive. Drill Sergeant Cleotos had a wry gleam in his eye, though, pouring us all wine after wine. He had let us have that day, that night. But in the morning, with the heaviest of heads in the hot sun, the drilling begun. Parmenion lectured us that day, told stories of glory and glories awaiting. A promise that we would share in such kept us upright through those tough months of training. Tough. You could say tough. Parmenion would lead us to teach those Illyrians a lesson. Oh yes, our northern borders secured, sir, finally, decisively. And on that same day of battle elsewhere, as the king was laying siege to Patidia, back at the capital, beautiful Pella, a son was born to him, Alexander.
It's fair to say King Philip was popular with the soldiery, and in forming the League of Corinth, tried to unify the Greek states against a common cause, Persia. However, he had his detractors, who viewed him as power-hungry and deceitful. Can you give us some flavor of the man from a soldier's perspective? Did you ever see him?
I saw the king twice. Close enough to matter, you understand. Not a dot on the horizon. We saw him riding in the distance many times. Yes, at the siege of Methone I saw him, close enough to matter. Methone, ally of Athens, well fortified on the coast of the mighty Aegean. My first sight of that legendary ocean. We all got drunk and threw up in it. Yes, there at Methone during the siege, where the king lost his eye. Oh, I was there, sir. King Philip checking the catapults and the siege towers with his sappers near the front line. From Methone's walls, an arrow down into his head. Well, we thought he was dead. You could hear the cheers from the city walls, the clamor rising as our dread rose with it. The battlefield grew quiet, time passing like a fever dream. Our king, our king. Some were crying, hard men too. But their celebration and our sorrow was swapped, sir, as he stood up. A man, our king, arrow sticking out of his head, like an immortal from the Iliad, ghastly, fierce, and angry as Hades himself. Huzzah and hurrah! Well, the city was taken within the hour. Oh, a second wind. A wind as if Poseidon himself were at our backs, blowing a mighty gust. If his valor was rising before, it was fixed then, hardened by his injury. The mettle and solidarity of the men cast harder after that too, I can tell you. We counted this one-eyed king one of us. Once it healed, he paraded by, gleaming down from his horse so we could see the gore, see his injury, see it raw and stitched. See, he was one of us. Well, he'd had his brush with death, no more wounds he'll suffer. No, he's paid his due.
King Philip's eye wound was treated successfully, preventing further infection and leaving little disfigurement. Physician Critobulus performed the operation. Critobulus studied at the Hippocratic School on Kos, known for its advanced medical knowledge and practices. He used a special medical tool to remove the arrow, known as the Spoon of Diocles. Philip encouraged court artists to portray him with this injury, so he must have been proud, and proud of surviving it.
Proud and merciful. We were going to sack the city. Revenge, the momentum of rage, sir. But he forbade it. People were allowed to leave with their lives. Not their property, though. We took our revenge out on the buildings. Wasn't much left of fair Methone after that. No bloodletting that day. Even after such an insult, blinding the king by half. His plans for Macedon came before hasty revenge. He had the archer hung, though. A quick death, really. Should have been worked on. A little more strength in that bow pull, things would have gone wrong badly for Macedon. Alexander would have ascended prematurely, sir, uncontested. King Alexander? His military experience, sure, he has it. Plenty of fight, but a head for politics? No. Prefers philosophy, mythology. Well, his father has made Cyclops now. That must have amused him. Has a dark streak, prone to rage, spoiled by his foreign mother Olympias. Still, something may come of him. If he lives, the palace is a battlefield too. He'll ascend when Philip dies in battle many years from now. Unless Philip has more sons, he has an appetite, I can tell you. Appetite of a Gorgon. Like a soldier in every respect. In his cups and in his bed, aye. Like a soldier, yes.
Well, thank you, Kallikrates. Maybe we can get you back in a few years to share stories from your upcoming campaigns. Well, that about wraps it up for Out of Time this week, because we're out of time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.